This piece of equipment is one of the biggest and most unique antiques in the world, a 500,000-watt transmitter that gave WLW Radio the right to call itself the nation station. In fact, some would say it could be called the only worldwide station there ever was.
This is the nation station.
And this is a guy who started it all, Powell Crosley Jr., on March 22nd, 1922. Oh, there were already radio stations, but radios were big and complicated. Crosley would make them small, simple, and cheap. He's the guy who would let everybody have one.
Powell Crosley's theory was if I could build more power into the transmitter, I can build cheaper radios. So he wanted to build real cheap radios and one big, powerful transmitter.
Come spend an evening at Crosley Square, where Freddie Leitner will greet you there.
Within a decade, WLW would be the first station in the country to hit 50,000 watts and make stars of names like Red Skelton, the Clooney sisters, the Mills Brothers, and Doris Day. But 50,000 watts wasn't enough. By 1932, Crosley had increased the power to 500,000 watts, the only one in the country. It would stay at that power until 1939, and then when the war started in 1941, the super transmitter was powered up again.
During the war, they were given special temporary authority to operate 500,000 watts between midnight and 6. And it's widely rumored that those broadcasts were used to send coded messages to troops overseas and around the world.
WLW would become a national defense item, and today the guard tower still remains where the transmitter was patrolled by the military.
This is the nation station, WLW, the Crosley Broadcasting Corporation. 500,000 watts of power from Cincinnati.
WLW Radio Cincinnati is so special to me that I said, well, I'll come down, but you got to put together my heroes, because I'm in this business today because of them. And they may not know this, because I've probably never told them. These are the guys who I'm starstruck by, still today. Because I walked into Provident Bank building at 3 East 4th Street, 3 blocks away from here, in June of 1984, and I walked out a few hours later knowing exactly what my career was going to be. I was only 10 years old, and it was no longer the Provident Bank building to me, it was Graceland. And I still drive by that building and look up in those third-floor windows and go, gosh, I remember being up there 40 years ago almost, and how special of a place that was. The lineup included Jim Scott, who was the morning host, and is here today, and was a AC jock, was at WNBC in New York, and became a full-service morning show megastar in this market for #1 for over 2 decades. Mike McConnell was a rock program director at 96 Rock and wanted to do Common Sense Midday Talk. You're over here, Randy.
You work in the mailroom.
Now, I did work in the mailroom, but now you're sitting there because the mailman's in charge. Gary Burbank from Louisville and Memphis and New Orleans. CKLW in Detroit. And Gary Burbank was doing afternoons and had more characters in his head than Saturday Night Live. Dusty Rhodes, who entertained us on the weekends. He filled in for a lot of people, too, with oldies, and a super jock from WSAI in the 60s, and there was no one better to do 60s oldies on LW in the 80s than Dusty, because those baby boomers were craving their oldies music. And Hot Wax Weekend, and taking calls from all over North America. And the one person who was part of that lineup who's not here is represented by me, I guess, my father, who did overnights, the trucking show, the Truckin' Bozo. Bill Cunningham, when he comes up, he was actually a liberal talk show host, and he can tell you the story, I think he already told it, but about how he got on the station. And Randy says, you're too liberal.
Talk show host.
You're too liberal to do talk radio in this market. And Cunningham says, oh, that's easy. The next night he came on, he was right of the 10 Commandments. Randy, you took over the station July 7th, 1983.
83, yeah. The station was in bankruptcy. I was thinking about this. I think we have to accept responsibility. I think 700 WLW is responsible for a lot of what's wrong with radio today. And I think it's situational. You know, if you remember 1983, the big AM station in town was 55 KRC. #1 biller, 2554, rock solid. KRC, WLW was owned by a crazy man, too much debt, lost ball, high weeds, and but big signal, God. But KRC was very female, and WLW had the Reds. So I had a plan for KRC. I was going to move the midday guy to afternoons and hire comedy writers. I was going to move the afternoon guy to middays and slowly take the music off. I was going to make the morning show more of a full-service wheel and continue to talk at night, all skewed female. And I got a chance to be part of LW. I was, well, taking them on, they got all the women. We'll just do it, but with men. And so we were crazy and edgy and speed, sport, sex, full-service morning show with a market legend.
A lot can happen while you sleep. That's why on weekday mornings, 700 WLW gives you news updates every 15 minutes. 700 WLW knows how busy you are and that you need information quickly. You're never more than 15 minutes away from news in the morning on 700 WLW. Plus Pat Berry's weather and the Tri-State's most familiar personality, Jim Scott. Early mornings on News Radio 700 WLW.
You were not crazy. You were very sane, sober, the grown-up, the responsible person in the room. But he's revered in this market. This is, there's nobody who's better liked and better well-known than Jim Scott. What an amazing anchor. They were crazy through the day. But here's the thing. WLW did so well. Within a year, we weren't just first 12 plus and 25-54. We were second 18 to 34 on AM. And everybody wanted to be like us, and everybody tried to copy it. But nobody had this amazing lineup of talent. The luckiest thing that's ever happened to me is the privilege, the honor, and the unbelievably fortunate circumstance of working with the talent up here. So I really think they ought to talk. But I think we screwed up the industry because everybody tried to copy us, and nobody can do it like these people can do it. And so, bad copies of something that aren't,
I don't disagree.
See, you don't want to work for me anymore. You're allowed to disagree.
It was such a fun place to work, and to some degree it still is, but it was one of those where when we started, there was no blueprint to follow, so everybody just did what they thought they could do pretty well, and it worked out. And I think in large measure, to a degree, most people there kind of saw it as a serious job, but they kind of treated the station like a little bit of a toy. Something to play with.
Well, when you're serving the public imagination, you need to be creative, and a loose, fun atmosphere in the halls is essential. And I've used that excuse to justify some reprehensible behavior, but that doesn't mean it's false. And we did have fun.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that there was a degree of camaraderie there that is very unusual. A lot of places you'll work and every show is an island. That was never the case there. You could pop in on anybody's show anytime you wanted. It's true. And tell somebody, well, you're nuts. This is the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. And somebody would stop in on my show and say this, just completely interrupt me in the middle of what I was doing. And it worked out well that way. It was a lot of it was genuine crossover that really helped build that place.
Cunningham still does that. Because I think he's just lazy, he doesn't know what he wants to do that day, so he grabs somebody, But no, seriously, Cunningham will go out in the hall and get you. And, and if he sees you in the building, right, Dusty? Says, stop by for the Stooge report.
One of the most impressive things to me was the way Jim Scott came into this market at WSAI and actually conducted a political campaign to get listeners, and did. And Stan Matlock was the king of Cincinnati mornings for years. Jim came in, actually went around and knocked on doors and asked people to listen to him. And they did. And, of course, they liked what they heard. But that was really...
That still works.
Yeah.
I mean, I always work the room. And so here's the thing about radio. You meet somebody, and then you get their full name, you learn a little bit about them, and then you say, would you listen to me tomorrow morning? Or would you listen to me on the radio? It doesn't cost anything. The odds are you're the first radio person that ever asked them that. And then you have them. And then you talk about them the next day. That takes care of it. You've got them for 10, 20, 30, 40. Why would you lose them? Just keep servicing them. So that's the way I did it. Willie, hello.
Who do you service now, Jim? What are you talking about?
You used to be a liberal, huh?
I was. I'll have to be whatever I can be to get as many listeners as possible, whatever it takes. But let me tell you one story about Jim Scott. It's early on. It's like 83, 84, and I'm talking to Jim, and I said, I've not done radio before. What do you do? And he said, what you have to do is walk around restaurants, hand out your card. And you go into a Frisch's or a McDonald's or whatever it might be, Kroger,
right,
with a Grippo bag in your back pocket.
Right.
And he hands out a card saying, I'm Jim Scott, listen to me tomorrow. And I thought, that's one hell of a way to build an audience. I did it the other way by speaking at various functions. We did the Friday Night Follies, which was all the football scores.
Yes.
And so on Thursday night, if the big football game, for those in maybe Elder St. X or maybe another big game, Deer Park versus Sycamore, I would have on the coach or the star of the team. Then the next night we'd do the score, and then they'd call me on the way home. So from that, doing that for years and years and years, the parents would say, hey, let's put on Willie on Friday night to see how the other teams did and listen to my kid on the radio. So I did the same thing you did, except I did it a little differently with hopefully better results.
This group has always been after each other. And I can, Jim, I don't know if you remember, but not long after you started, you came in my office and said, do people not like me here? You were doing an Alaskan cruise. And Gary did a parody of the commercials.
Yeah.
Well, Jim's on the cruise. We're going to his palatial estate in Indiana and ride his horses and drink his liquor. And, you know, and he said, everybody, you know, they make fun of. He said, I said, no, this is good. This is recycling.
Yeah.
Nobody's making fun of you.
It took me a while to learn that.
In awe of you. But it's wrestling. That's how, you know. Hey, Cunningham used to kill Bozo. When Bozo would go on vacation, he'd say, oh, Bozo's died. And he's dead. And we get flowers and...
I did Russian dirge music to begin my show at 9 o'clock. It was like, I hate to report tonight, the drunken Bozo has died tragically. He was in a hut somewhere in the hills of Tennessee, and a brown bear had some intimate experience with the Bozo, and it's a terrible incident. And I had truckers flashing their lights going by the studio in memory of the Bozo. So I said, look, at midnight tonight when he comes on, it's not the Bozo. He taped a goodbye show that he knew something bad was going to happen. So he started off doing a regular show without knowing people are calling in, Bozo, we loved you, man. You were the best there ever was. And finally, I spoke at his funeral. I expected he'd get out of the coffin at some point. I killed him off several times. Traffic accidents, terrible, terrible circumstances. And every time, but one time, I said, eventually I'm going to be correct. And I was. And I gave the eulogy with the little Bozo sitting over there. He used to get us pizza. Remember Bozo, little Sean Compton, get us pizza, you know? And he finally did die, didn't he? I'm not sure. I think he did.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
I know
because a lot of people.
If he was a hypochondriac,
Yeah, I mean,
he might just think he's dead.
Hey, Gary Burbank, could I apologize to you? When we first started together down at 3 East 4th Street, every day, Gary's on in the afternoon, I'm doing the morning show. And so when I come in the following morning, maybe I'm a little bit of a neatnik, but there was this like really dirty old pillow that was like laying on the ground, you know, right near where we're working. And I would always pick it up and I would throw it into the garbage can. And then Gary, being not quite as tall as the average human being, would sit on that and was so pissed off that somebody was throwing his pillow in the garbage. I'd like to apologize.
You don't have to apologize. I did a lot of shit to you. You know, but who really didn't like it was LaBarbera. When Jim LaBarbera, he told Doc, he said, Gary is hanging his socks up in my mailbox. And I was doing that because he kept complaining too. And so I thought, you know, we'll just try this. So I put, and he would get Doc to come back and move my socks because he wouldn't touch them. And
See,
but the
that's
best thing
logical to Gary.
on
That
LaBarbera was
makes
when we
perfect
stole his uniform. Remember the time Trumpy stole Jim LaBarbera's uniform, Reds uniform.
They used to have this game. It was a media game before a Reds game. And Jim took it very, very seriously with him. I mean, he looked like he played for the team with LaBarbera on the back. It was his pride and joy. And the day of the big game.
Trump goes up and he somehow finds his uniform. And then they take it downstairs. There was a men's store downstairs. And they put it on a mannequin. So Jim is just bitching and moaning. Where's my, who's got, Gary, you, tell me what they did. I know nothing. And so he was downstairs. They said at one point, there's a picture of this. Jim is standing in front of the station, and right beside him is the mannequin throwing the ball, wearing his uniform, looking for who's got his damn uniform out there.
And the clerk wouldn't sell him his uniform. I want to, give me my, it's not your uniform, sir, it's LaBarbera. I'm LaBarbera. No, you're not, it's a uniform. He plays for the Reds. He couldn't buy his own uniform back. And he took himself too seriously. You got to be serious, but never take yourself seriously.
You know, that's somebody else who played a big role in the rise of this place was Trumpy. Bob Trumpy pretty much invented sports talk. There was no other place that had a show called Sports Talk. And Trumpy tells the story that he was in L.A. for some reason, post-Lakers game. A former player was on just talking and taking some calls about the Lakers game, and he thought, why didn't that work with other sports? And then back here, he finished his career with the Bengals and originally went to WCKY, and they took him on to start there and eventually moved over to LW. But, I mean, think how much money is in sports talk everywhere, whether it's radio, television, whole networks, and Trumpy was the first person to do that.
He had the best radio show I've ever heard in my life. Was when a woman called him one night, going to commit suicide.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And this woman, after a few minutes, she realized this is real. She's going to kill herself. Trumpy starts talking her down. And it took, how long was he on the air? 2, 3 hours?
It was, yeah, most
3 hours. They would take breaks, you know, and he would say, I want you to, just to hold on. I'm going to come back in 2 minutes, and we're going to talk some more about what life should be worth to you. And do you have any friends? Well, yeah. And this went, and it was sad, and you're just blown away by Trump's sympathy for this woman. And 3 hours later, she decided at the end she wouldn't do it. But the most impressive thing about that 3-hour show with a person going to commit suicide, you're talking him down. He didn't miss a single commercial.
Yeah,
I can see that coming.
The word is compelling, radio, and compelling. You didn't want to turn off because you might miss something on any of these shows. I worked briefly for a cup of coffee at CKLW. Gary came afterwards, and there was a record called The Americans by Byron McGregor. And he was going to do it at the Detroit Tigers, and they trusted Gary to do the audio for some reason.
They didn't really, because Byron was turned out to be. I had done a parody of that in Louisiana. You remember the Louisianans? When the earthquakes come, who runs and jumps in the holes? The Louisianans. And like it was ridiculous. And so I go up there, and we really became friends about that. And after that, but Byron, what were you talking about now?
The Americans, and he was reciting it at the Detroit Tigers game, and you put the Mickey Mouse clothes on.
Yeah, I'll get to the punchline here.
Okay. Blow it.
Give me your punchline. No, so he came and said, I have to do the Americans, and my board out was Jose, and Jose said, I'll take care of it for you. So he put it on a Wallen sack recorder, you know, America the Beautiful. And I said, well, why don't you leave the studio here, because we're not supposed to touch anything, you know, the unions and stuff like that. He left, and I put a little something on the end. And so Byron is standing on the pitcher's mound. And he's going, and you know, have you heard the Americans? Most of you have. And this is one Canadian who stands up for America, and da-da-da-da. 35,000 people in the stands on July the 4th or whatever, hands over their hearts, and it's very touching. And he says, and this is one American who stands by our neighbor to the south, America. And the music goes, da, 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 da. And then I come in going, that's all, folks. And Byron is just like, but they said you heard him say, Burbank. And then he dumped 2 tons of horse shit in my driveway.
He did, literally.
Well, he didn't do it. He's too clean. He had someone do it. And he dumps the 2 tons of horse crap in the driveway, and as I'm leaving the next morning, I go, boom, what the hell? Pull up again, boom. So I get out of my car and I look, and there's, it's this high. And I'm going, I got to have to bust through this thing, man, because I got to get to work. So I pulled up as far as I could in the garage, put it in reverse, and bam, and bam, and finally get through it. So I got to work, pulled, into the parking lot of CKLW, and as I was walking inside, you want to make people think nothing's wrong, and so I walked inside, and hey, Gary, how's it going? Everything's fine. And so I go to the control room and screw around there for a few minutes. Everybody's looking at me, waiting for me to say, who the hell dumped? And so I made it like until after the 640 news. And Randall Carlisle was doing the news that morning. I saw Randall on the phone and said, Gary's not acting like anything's wrong. And so I made it that far, and then they go on the air. There was a disturbance at your house, by the way, I've forgotten the street I was on. And I said, oh, I told you guys we moved 2 weeks ago from there. and they're all like, oh, shit. But about that time, somebody had gone outside to smoke a cigarette and came back in and said, there's shit all over Gary's car. So I didn't get by with it.
Randy, would you tell a little bit about when you were on, as much as you want, excuse me, Alan Gardner, when you and Alan Gardner were on the air?
I mean,
that was fascinating radio, and that was before Mike then came in.
Yeah,
and then
we actually got a competent professional.
Yes.
To follow. Alan was a news director. Well, I did the talk show for the first year just to set the tone, because I wanted to break the rules and push the walls.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say penis. We won't do that again. That's Bill Cunningham, has sort of exclusive rights to that word. It is trivia today, not very controversial. We've settled in. We knew they'd be here to film for television, so we wanted not to be controversial. So I won't make any of the jokes about the vice presidential candidate, right?
Such as?
No,
which ones won't you make?
No Wally and the Beaver jokes today. Forget that.
We didn't talk politics or sports. I know that's shocking. We just talked about stuff. And, of course, I'd always try to make it as sticky. It was diary days, memorable. Yeah. People talk, and, we'd do, if you were going to kill somebody, who would you kill? How would you do it? And how would you hide the body? And then we'd try and help them with the plans. Like, oh no, this is how you don't get caught. And here's a better way to do an alibi. And we'd just do shit that was over the line, that was sticky and memorable. And it set the tone that this is because WLW was at that time 80 years old. It had been the only 500,000 watt station in America. Everyone thought it was a wonderful station. They remembered their grandparents loved it. WLW didn't sell a local commercial until '55. They were the nation station. They were dignified. They were old. It's this huge signal, and nobody listened. Let us get away with murder at KRC. And I wanted to say, I have tremendous respect for this amazing one-of-a-kind radio station, the grand old lady of broadcasting, but I want to teach her to dance. She's not part of history, she's part of now. We're going to take this amazing facility and lead change. We're going to bring life back to AM radio by being what we could be, and we ended up second 18-34, almost out of the box, but it was an FM morning show. We were just anything that wasn't right. If I didn't think we were having a great show, I'd say, man, we suck. Let's see what else is on. And I'd turn the radio on and put on KRC, oh, that's terrible. And turn on CKY, and they're talking about gardening or something. God, we suck, but what else are you going to do? This is terrible. And, the other stations would go crazy. And it's just all that shit people didn't do, and why not? It's funny. I'd turn on TV, say, man, we suck. And we'd click around and put the TV on for a while and play a little. You look at that. Oh, that's boring. Okay, what are we going to talk about? And of course, we have a plan, but it was just that set the tone of don't take yourself seriously. Don't, the news is serious. The morning show, Jim Scott. All the credibility in the world, but then, let's have fun. And, you know, Lee Jacobs was talking about how quickly people decide if they're going to listen. And he was talking about the importance of resetting the topic and reminding people what you're talking about. And that's a good plan, especially if you're not particularly talented. But if you have these guys, you don't have to do that, because I don't care. If you tune in any one of these people, in 30 seconds, I don't care what they're talking about. You can come in the middle of a bit, in the middle of a sentence, you're going to be hooked. And that show, I'm not as talented as these guys, but that show set the tone to, like, be unpredictable, be unexpected, be something people talk about. Take ideas and synthesize them. Don't just say, oh, Trump sucks. Take two ideas that don't seem to relate in any way and mix them to create an entirely new thought. So people say, hey, have you ever thought about this when they go to work? Make it sticky, make it memorable, make it high touch. And that's what that show was about, was setting that tempo, not taking ourselves seriously, surfing current events, being willing to try almost anything and see if it sticks and stays. And then Mike, who's just outstanding, came in and did the show the way it should be done.
Now, I think one other thing to throw in there is we did work hard. I mean, I remember Dave.
You make it sound like you're screwing off, but you know.
No, I mean, Dave Mason. Remember, he was filling in for Jim sometimes. He'd be on vacation, and he from KRC. Dave Mason came over. I remember he just kept saying he was amazed how early people were getting to work, because Gary'd be there 3 hours early.
Yeah, it was like that.
Yeah, I'd be at least an hour and a half, 2 hours early. He was, I guess, he was used to people showing up at 5 till, jumping on, do what you do, and go. But at LW, people did. We put the work in and had a good time.
The preparation was incredible.
Yeah, no doubt.
Show prep.
Yeah, we were really.
Except Willie.
I wanted to. Yeah, Willie just ran in the hallway and grabbed somebody and said, "You are, you know, a bank robber who just killed our sales manager."
We have time to kill. That's, well, come on, I'd kill some time.
And I caught you, and you know, and tell you, I wanted to tell a little about, you know, with Randy, the way that I ended up here longer. I remember Randy had hired me to go to WDAE in Florida, and then it didn't work out. Well, WDAE didn't work out, and so I was there for I think 2 books, about 6 months or something. And so we came back, and but there was another guy that hired me at WLW. And so I go in, and I'm working a while, and then Randy and his group they purchased the station. Right. And so I'm like, wow, okay, Randy's got to be pissed at me because I didn't make that happen down there.
I was pissed at Jim Pidcock. He was a tool.
Well, but, you know, you're worried about that. So it came time to, you know, usually when a group takes a station over, if you're there, you know, if you've been there, you're out. And so I went into Randy's office, and before I did that, I was talking to my daughter Tracy, who was here. And she was, how old were you? You were 5 years old or something, or 6 years old or something like that. And she said, Dad, I've been to 5 different schools, 5 different years. I really love it here, and I wonder if there's some way that you could stay. And I said, I'll do my best. You know, but it's not the normal thing. You know, they usually, you know, let you go. And I had an offer to go to L.A. at KABC from, what's this? You know what I'm talking about.
You'd have loved working for George Green.
But this guy would have been okay, I think, but he wouldn't have been fun. No. And so I remember I walked in to talk to Randy, and I thought Randy would say, well, how much money do you want? I would say how much. He would say, I'm sorry, that's too much. And so he said, how much money do you want? I told him how much I wanted, and he said, Gary, that's not enough.
Who is the all-time leading scorer in Kentucky basketball history?
All-time leading scorer in Kentucky basketball history. Who wants to take it, Andy or?
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, Bob.
That's Ken Anderson's neighbor from Batavia, Illinois.
I'm sorry, that's not completely correct.
What do you mean completely correct? Are you getting picky on us here?
The all-time leading scorer is Dan Issel.
Dan Issel, yes.
No, that's not it. I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. Where do you get your information?
The all-time leading scorer in Kentucky basketball history is not male but female. It's Valerie Still.
Oh.
Whoa, technicality.
Trumpy.
There. Technicality.
Wait a minute.
A winner.
No, I'd have said that if he asked for a woman.
Well, he didn't have to ask for a woman. He said all-time leading scorer.
My answer is correct.
We are not.
Well, how do you figure that?
Kentucky.
What?
Valerie has scored more points than any other player in Kentucky history.
Well, now that's not true either, because the guy who played at that small town in eastern Kentucky, who averaged 60 points a game for 4 years in high school, is the leading scorer.
Oh, come to think of it,
Kentucky
you know,
history.
got you on a technicality too. Do you agree with that?
That's Irvin Stepp.
Irvin Stepp.
Irvin Stepp is the all-time leading Kentucky scorer.
Kentucky history.
And with the
You didn't state University
Well,
of Kentucky.
let's see what he says to this now. What do you say to this, Truett?
If you want to nitpick, buddy, we can nitpick the best of them.
What do you think, Truett?
No, I stand by what Bob...
Okay, don't worry about advocating anymore. He has to now, you see.
More pass interceptions in 1980.
The most interceptions thrown by a quarterback in 19...
Yeah.
In the NFL?
NFL. It's a pretty good question. Sooner or later. How about a hint, then? We do deserve one hint.
You want a hint?
Yes, one hint is all.
All right. How about, this might not be a too good hint, but his last name ends with a W.
That's a good hint.
W.
Last name ends with a W. Okay, Trump, what do you think?
Woodrow Wilson.
W.
Jackson Andrew.
Jackson?
Wrong.
No?
Wrong.
We've said a few words. I've been supportive.
I think we may have a winner here.
Terry Bradshaw.
Terry Bradshaw ends in a W. Fellas, you have to admit one thing.
Hang on, Arthur.
Cute kid. Are you ready?
Hey, the prize man!
I have for you no King's Court card game. They're all gone away. Kid wanted one, see? I'm going to get you lunch at Hardee's. Ooh. Also, registering you in the $1 million giveaway. Oh, he's not old enough. We're going to register your big brother in the $1 million giveaway. Ooh. Not only that, we have, how much money? I'm sorry, we had to come up with some bread here.
29 cents.
29 cents? We have 29 cents. How do you feel?
I feel just unexplainable.
That's good. Thanks for calling. And thank you for listening to Sports or Consequences on the Big One. And I'd like to thank our sports aficionados. It was
the most unique, most creative, funniest talent
so
in
I
America.
said, well,
What
is? And he told me, and I was overwhelmed. And I came home, and that's all I could think about. I got home, and Tracy, came running out of the house, and she said, "What's going on?" I said, "We're here for a while." 27 years.
Wasn't it 10 years? It was a 10-year contract. 10.
That was a 10-year contract.
10 years.
10-year, no cut.
Now, one thing we tried to do was act in between and with each other. We're not in a locker room. We're on a stage. We fought constantly. So one night I'm on the air till 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. for about a year. Lynn Gladhill, who was on at 1 o'clock until 6 a.m., went crazy. I don't know what she did. Every F-bomb, she dropped them all.
She was a psychic. She worked all night.
She drank a half a gallon of wine, I think.
And she couldn't spell the word asshole.
Couldn't do it. And Randy should have known that if she was psychic, what was going to happen, but Lynn didn't tell him what was going to occur. So that was done. He walks in with the truck and bozo. I'm on the air like at 10 o'clock and says, I think I'm from Kansas City. Walks in and looks like Wolfman Jack. And this is the person taking Lynn Gladhill's place. And I said, great. He wants you two to interact, hand it off to him, introduce him into the market. I've been there about a year. So I said, let's come up with something. I'm going to attack you and all the truckers. Toothless, illiterate hillbillies. They got the whores. They got the lot lizards, all this crap. And then I'll have a war with the truckers. You go the other side, and you be the greatest friend of the trucker. So we made some bet, and I lost it. So I said, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to be on Fountain Square in Cincinnati. Any truck that comes off I-75, I'll get up and wash your windshield. Windex, paper towels, the whole deal. Between 1 and 2 a.m. in the morning, I'll be there. So I got in this huge fight with him.
Oh, you're saying you probably can't even drive downtown. You don't know how to drive that truck.
I have no
You're
idea.
drunk.
No. I show up and I lose the bet. I was on purpose. I was going to lose it. So 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm at Fountain Square, and the trucks are lined up over the bridge on 75, all the way up halfway to day. They have 400 trucks. The police, highway patrol, sirens are going, and I'm washing windshields for like an hour or two on Fountain Square to introduce the truck and bozo to this market. And every time the bozo showed up, he had more pills. He began with like 4 pills. Then he got 10 pills. I'm in a restaurant with him. Tell the story about bozo in the restaurant. Eating dinner.
My wife Carol and I and her parents, who are, they're not real stiff, but they're pretty well good citizens. And Bozo, this is in Florida, and Bozo, as we sit at the table, Bozo Lumpy, Carol and me, Bozo pulls up his shirt and his T-shirt, this great big gut goes, boom. And like, wow, that's amazing. And then he pulls out a hypodermic needle. And he goes, I said, Bozo, wait. You're going to give yourself a shot
This
in
is
the
Sean's
stomach,
father, by the way.
in the stomach, in a restaurant with all these people. He goes like, I could give it myself in the ass. And he goes, boom. He does it right here. But you know what's funny, what you're saying about the truckers, they hated your guts.
They wanted to run me off the road.
Well, don't you remember at the eulogy, when Willie gets up and he does the American.
This was when he really died.
Yeah, he does.
We think.
So
Preacher was
the trucker
horrified
sat there
by
just
that.
kind of looking at him like, why the hell is he here? He's not like Bozo. And so as Willie walks off of the stage, I as I walked past him, I just grabbed him and kissed him full on the lips. And they're all looking, and I get up to the bandstand.
The Gay Truck Drivers of America is what I call the organization.
No, but I got up to the microphone and said, you're probably wondering about that kiss. I have the worst freaking cold I've ever had in my life.
Good morning. I'm the Bozo on the big one as we roll along here. Hello to Max Henderson. He and old Possum Breath is somewhere down around Marietta, Florida, listening to us this morning. And the Indiana Roadrunner, let's see what we got on the telephone. Hello, Bozo phone. You're on the air, and who's this?
They have names like Possum Breath and Roadrunner, and they love Dale Sommers, the self-proclaimed truckin' bozo on WLW radio in Cincinnati.
I think you're just handsome, and I want a picture of you to keep in my bedroom.
Going blind, I can tell that too. All right, little leopard, you have a good morning.
On this morning, talk centers around Monday's massive truck convoy that crossed Indiana, a protest instigated by the bozo.
We were in one lane, observing the speed laws, and motored across the state of Indiana. I don't know of anyone that got a ticket or anybody that was run off a road by a killer truck.
I was alone when you found me.
It's not the first such convoy, and Sommers promises it won't be the last. Sentiment against Indiana's reduced speed limit for trucks remains strong.
They just go ahead and convoy that state till the cows come home.
All right.
I think they'll get somewhere.
Well, okay.
Here you sit in Ohio, influencing the traffic patterns on Indiana interstates.
I certainly would. It wouldn't bother me if I was in Louisiana. I'd still do the same thing. It's concerning the truck drivers of North America, the American way of life.
He urges civil and legal protests. And so the big rigs roll on, and so does the bozo.
I understand their problems, and I sympathize with them, and I try to help them.
And with 50,000 watts to work with, Sommers can't get Indiana off his mind.
Hang about it. 700 WLW, Jerry Lee, the killer.
These stories all blend together, but the station had a real connection with the audience. That's the thing that stood out for me. It was compelling on the air all the time, and I came from top 40 radio, so this talk stuff, what's this all about? And I was listening, and the people in Cincinnati are loyal to a fault, but the station established through these different personalities a connection that really stood it in good stead and continues to this day.
It's Jan and Dean music on 700 WLW, and here they come from all over the world. This is Dusty keeping you company, making nighttime the bright time on a great Sunday on the big one, 700 WLW.
Baby.
That's Johnny Rivers from the Whiskey A Go-Go. It was 1967, bringing back a song done just a couple of years ahead of that by the Four Tops. Here on 700 WLW, the new king of Queen City Radio.
We weren't conservative, we weren't liberal, we took news very seriously.
Good evening, Bill Tonis, the 700 WLW Newsroom. A reversal on Walter Mondale's plan to oust Charles Minat. Gary Hart may have a plan to steal delegates away from Mondale. A profile on Alton Coleman, and good news at the gas pump.
I mean, if something happened, we were on it. We erred on the side of overkill on the big story, and we were serious about it. We were good about it. We were really together. But then if nothing big was going on, why not have fun? And I don't think most company cultures would allow the kind of shenanigans that went on. But the results speak for themselves. It was just fun. It wasn't destructive or mean-spirited. It was just unconventional.
Talk about your move to noon to 3.
Well, Little story there. I served a stint, like in Leavenworth, as the program director.
Yeah, we all loved that.
Didn't like it much. Classic scene when Gary Burbank turned over my desk. We'll leave that.
They made him the
Literally.
program. Well, I'll tell the whole story.
Tell the whole story.
They made you the program director.
Randy did.
Randy did. And I didn't care. I mean, that's great because I'm going to do what I'm going to do
Thanks
anyway.
a lot, Randy.
And I get along with Willie. We get along fine. And so, but I came in one day, and I think you did it on purpose. You say you didn't, but he's parked in my parking space. I didn't do what Trumpy did. I didn't let all the air out of all of your tires. You got to remember that. Trumpy used to do that.
Gary was on 2 to, well, you were in the mornings when I and then you went to afternoons, gave you more time.
Hated mornings.
2 to 6, and Mike was on
10 to 2.
10 to 2, 4 hours, and you were on 4 hours. And so I had the idea of putting me on 12 to 3, cutting you back an hour, which moved you back 9 to 12, 3 hours instead of 4.
So what happened was we decided morning drive started at 5. So Jim started at 5, went to 9. I started at 9. For a while, went 9 to 2.
So my idea was I went to Mark Chase.
Gives you another hour morning drive to sell.
I say to Mark Chase, look, it saves Mike an hour, and it saves Gary 3 hours better than 4, and it's better. And he said, that's a stupid idea. You're never going to work 12 to 3. I said, why not? He said, you have on the fun ladies. You talk about dildos. You have all this crap on, the beeswax, the bees, all this. It's not going to play 12 to 3. I said, Mark, I'll change my act a little bit. I'll do different things. I know what I can adjust. I can play many roles. He said, no, you can't. He said, try it. Randy's going to be gone for like a month or 2 traveling somewhere. And he said, by the time he comes back, I'll tell him you're so successful it's going to work. So he put me on 12 to 3. Now my competition is a guy named Rush Limbaugh, you know, which... Pretty good competition. But I said, look, I'm going to do local. I'm not going to talk about Clinton and sex and Monica Lewinsky and all that stuff. Now that he's come out today, yesterday he finally said what happened. He got horny and needed some strange, and that's what happened. But he didn't say it at the time. So we did all these parodies, and I said, look, I can change my act. And so when I went 12 to 3, it allowed Mike to do 3 hours, which was perfect for him. Allowed you to do 3 hours, which was perfect for you. And I was... against the ratings, against Rush, you know, he should be better in local markets and national markets, and we were able to do that. And then when Trumpy left, we had Collinsworth who came in and Andy Furman, both of whom were terrible in the beginning, but they became hilarious. They were wonderful, and it just set it all up. And then Randy left us. He left us alone.
But the show you're talking about was like, I come in and he's in my parking place, and I went upstairs. I said, "You're in my parking place, man." And he goes like, maybe it's my parking place now. He was just screwing around, so I did too. So I reached under his desk, thinking it was one of those small little desks, you know, that had drawers. And I went, poof, and his desk went flying up in the air.
And like
wham! I said, and we looked at each other. I said, maybe I'll park here.
I'll say, Gary, park wherever you want.
Didn't Randy tell you that you'd never make it as a...
Well, no. Gary told me the same thing. I recall it differently than Randy. I was on for 6 months doing weird stuff. Rules are in 83, no sex, no politics. Deal with advice shows is 83, 84, equal time, hadn't been taken care of in 87. And as I recall it, I was there 5 or 6 months, got an offer to run as a Democrat for a Republican job. Robert Kraft, not the one in the one hung low massage parlor, a different Robert Kraft, who was on the bench. And I went to Randy and said, Randy, you have a future in radio. As I recall it, he said, you probably do not. And so I said, you better run for judge. But what happened then is home state collapsed. My firm had done some legal work for ODGF, High Deposit Guarantees Fund. I organized a 4,000-person rally at the Schmidt House, Xavier University. Suddenly, I started doing things I understood completely, and my act developed because of this guy.
Let the radio station burn down. Everybody concentrate. The Macho Man Randy Savage is talking to you right now, and you're listening to Bill Cunningham on 700 WLW. Keep on listening. Yeah.
Turn it up there, segment. It's about time you had us open correctly. Strike my remarks from the record. Tonight we're doing open discussion and or legal advice. If you have a question, a comment, or a call, 749-3420. We only have 3 lines available. You better call now or else you'll be dead all night. Let's go back to my other comments. I had spent considerable time with Ms. Jane on Friday evening at the stadium. You must have seen it all on TV 5, 9, and 12, the Enquirer, the Post, the KGB, the NCAA, The NAACP were there. It was a big deal. And what happened that particular night was disgusting, because that woman did not have the best interests of Cincinnati football at heart. We told her today on the telephone, we're done with you, bitch. That's it. What we're going to do now is bring in Doc Tommy Scott. It's going to happen on Wednesday night. You stay tuned for that. I can't believe it. Let's go briefly to the mailbag. Dear fellow Irishmen, tired of your shows such as penal implants? Can't get it up, huh? Let's get off sensational matters. That makes society worse than it should be, especially those dildos and the bedroom toy shows. You accomplish nothing but harm with trash like that. Joseph J. Dugan of Cincinnati. I would only ask Mr. Dugan next time to send me a letter that fits on my toilet paper roll, and then we can make some use of his particular comments. Next, we have a letter here from another gentleman named Randy Smith. Dear Dave Reinhardt, how about this? I think it's time you gave Mike McConnell some time off, like a paid week's vacation. He's sick. He must be suffering from burnout. His attitude is unpleasant and harsh. Maybe Randy Michaels could be on for 1 week if he's out of his shock therapy. And by the way, when are you going to get that screwball Cunningham off the air? Thank you very much for writing. Next, we have a note here from Phil Brewer of Fairborn. Dear Mr. Cunningham, I would think you as a lawyer would have appreciated how the police had to work within the framework of the law as to what they could and could not do as evidence to get a conviction. The saddest part of that story about the children was that the bodies have never been found, echoes in the darkness. We thank him very much for writing. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but we thank him nonetheless for writing.
I was serious. I thought I was a lawyer. But then I went to a wrestling match at Turfway.
You had to find a persona.
And I was with Gary, and I said, after about 2 bouts, Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, King Kong Bundy, I said, there's me right there. It's pro wrestling. And from that point on, I have the photo of me, you, and the Id Man calling the matches, and you're responsible for my act.
Yeah, you'd have Carl Lindner and all the elites down at the wrestling match. They had caviar and champagne concession, and you're acting like it's a big social event.
And there's King Kong Bundy, Hulk Hogan, Charlie Lucan tearing up.
I heard that story this morning. We were telling me when Willie and I were sitting there in King Kong Bundy, this enormous man walking down the hallway, and Willie and I are going, is he walking toward us?
I mean,
do you
big.
think he's going to kill us? You know, I don't know. He looks kind of mean. And he's like, boom, 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 walking toward the Coke machine. And he gets to the Coke machine, and he reaches down. And out of his trunks, I thought for sure he'd pull a chain, but he pulled a change purse.
And he put like a quarter in and out of his purse. Something. One of the bouts.
And he got his Coke, and he goes, nice to see you, and leaves. We're like, whoa, and that's not who you want to be.
No. I'm in the middle of the ring announcing from the mayor of Cincinnati, Charlie Lucan, because of the numerous contributions you've made to civic society, because of your 3 world championships across various weight classes, because of your future contributions, it's going to be Hulk Hogan Day in the city of Cincinnati. So the Hulkster was there. It was a nice proclamation. It was parchment with blue backing. And so the deal was I was supposed to give it to Hulk Hogan. Here comes Jimmy Superfly Snuka running down the ramp into the ring. He picks up the proclamation, tears it into small little pieces, and throws it up. Then I announce, ding, ding, the bout's underway. So I got this set up. I'm there with Vince McMahon in the back. We're talking about how to do it. Okay, what do we do? He tells me. I get out there. I go up there. I get in there. And because of all your contributions, Hulk Hogan, whether it's Tampa or Cincinnati, did all these whereas Hulk Hogan Day. He's there to pick it up and look at it. Here comes Jimmy Superfly Snuka. He runs the ramp, jumps over the top rope, hits me instead of Hulk Hogan. I go down. I'm sprawled like this, not part of the act. He picks up the proclamation, tears it up, has a large piece, and wipes his ass with it, and then throws it in Hulk Hogan's face. And I said, Gary, I got my act now. I'm okay. I now understand.
I don't know who you are. But I said, remember, that's who you are on the radio. That's not who
you
are when you go home.
I don't like people. I really don't like people.
These are 2 guys. These 2 guys both won 2 Marconis. Any surprise? They're absolutely the best.
About an hour goes by. I get a call on my cell phone from Hulk. And his name's Terry. And he said, Willie, this is Terry. Is there any way you can get me another copy of that Day, Hulk Hogan Day. I said, I could probably call the mayor. I mean, you really want a copy of that? He said, I would love that. So I got a hold of Charlie, got to City Hall, and mailed it to him in Tampa, Florida, at some nudist party, some nudist camp that he was living in.
Go ahead, Phil. You're on the big one.
You say you went down to the Getty. Do you ever remember a girl by the name of Virginia Bell?
Oh, was she red hair?
She had red hair and 48-inch bazoomas.
Was this the girl who used to turn the lights off, put lighted tassels on her boobies?
That's the one.
I saw her. And then during the middle of the act, she could make him spin the other way.
That's right.
I saw her.
Remember Gilbert? Gary?
No, I've forgotten him. It's Gilbert Gnarly was a character that I just started doing, and I don't know why. I mean, I just, you want to do a call-out character. I don't like the idea of crank calls that much, And Gilbert was never a crank caller. He was the one that was confused when he called. Like the place that he saw said free TV, called the guy and told the guy at the hotel, said, I got my free TV. I was able to unhook that. And... And I was able to unhook that, but I couldn't get the antenna. I need for you to send me the antenna. You took our TV? No, it's my TV. It's a free TV. It's set it on a sign outside, free TV. And I mean, the guy was ready to send the FBI after me, And
you did an American Express, but they had a promotion. If you lose whatever you buy from American Express, you get it back. So you buy dinner. Like at an Olive Garden, and you got sick to your stomach and threw up. Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And Gilbert Gnarly
gambled
calls
it
because
away,
you lost your lunch.
Lost all my money. And I said that you'd give me back, and I lost it. Well, no, it didn't say that. It just said if I lost it.
Well, I have this dream, and it's a dream about a car. Oh, no, it's a red car, and I'm driving through Norwood. Oh, no, wait, it's a yellow car, and I think it's Newport. Yeah, I'm driving through Newport, but I'm driving with my dog Crepso. No, Crepso is driving. Oh, this is nice. Wait, why Crepso? I'm driving with my lovely wife, Iona. No, it's Crepso.
I like the way you call whichever airline because your seat cushion was suitable for flotation, so you took it and were complaining it wasn't very good for float in the pool. You had the backyard pool and it was just a shitty flotation device. You took the seat, sir? You said it was usable for flotation, so
And Randy, you can't do that anymore, correct? As far as you have to notify ahead of time.
Listen, actuaries and MBAs are good, if you're doing actuarial tables, if you're trying to predict life expectancy. But when, the people who want to reduce everything to math take over media, that's not good for the creativity. And can you do it? Of course you can do it. It's still funny. It's still entertaining. I remember when you called Gilbert Gnarly, Gianni Gnarly, with him, the St. Pie Isadora Golden Buckeye Retirement Home in Pisgah, and he was going to bring the whole retirement home down in Nashville. They had a trip, and they want to know, they heard they put together a custom trip. Oh, yeah, what would you like to do? Oh, we need to see Webb Pierce's guitar-shaped swimming pool. Can you do that? Oh, yes, sir, we can do that. And we want to go to the Country Music Hall of Fame. Oh, yes, you can do that. And he goes through all this list of things that they want to do. And he says, and most important, we all voted. We want to see Porter Wagoner's grave. And the woman says, well, just a minute. She comes back. She says, sir, Porter Wagoner's not dead. Oh, that's going to spoil our trip. Could you take my information and call me when he dies?
And now, for news and views of the right wing, here's BBC commentator Earl Pitts, American.
You know what makes me sick? You know what makes me so angry? I won't lick a live battery terminal. Me and my buddy Dub decided to stop in for some chow on the way to the Big Gun and Knife Show. So we walk in one of them yuppie butt delis, and the waitress asked us what we want to eat. We said, what else? Bologna sandwiches. Well, she asked, what kind of bread you want on it? I said, what kind of bread you got? She said, we got rye, dark rye, German rye, rye with curry way seeds, pumpernickel, crescent rolls, sourdough bread, and something called Peter bread. Peter bread? I mean, who on earth's going to eat a bologna sandwich on something called Peter bread? I said, ain't you got no Wonder Bread? You can't make a real man sandwich unless you got Wonder Bread. Bread ain't supposed to look like some sissified French fudge. Real bread looks like drywall with crust. Wake up, America! If Wonder Bread was good enough to mail me a strong beer gut 12 ways, it's good enough to mail me a bologna sandwich in some yippee deli. This country was built on white bread, and don't you forget it. I'm Earl Pitts American. Pizza.
It's funny because you touched on the fact that you have a slight touch of dementia. Since you brought it up, 2 Christmases ago I saw Gary, a little wing-ding down the street here, and he goes, I've been diagnosed, I got a slight amount of dementia. He goes, but it's great, I can watch old Seinfelds, I forget how they end.
But that's true.
I know. It was hilarious.
I watched Seinfeld and all that stuff. MASH, man, I don't remember any of them.
Remember Dave Armbruster did the oldies, when we did oldies on the weekend, he did overnights and was playing some James Brown, and James Brown called him from Atlanta, was listening, to thank him for, number one, thank him for playing it, and then he just shot the breeze for a while.
There's one thing I wanted to mention. WABC in New York, Bob Grant, the Yankees, Rush Limbaugh's flagship, and WLW in Market 32 was outbilling WABC in New York.
That's another thing people forget. It's good business to focus on talent. Well, first of all, I think a good company is set up to focus on the signal first. You got to have a delivery system. Procter & Gamble will tell you, no Tide in the store, nobody buys Tide. If it's in a poorly lit back shelf, it's not going to sell as well as if it's brightly lit at eye level on an end aisle display. And that's signal. I would rather have the best signal with no ratings than a mediocre signal that's number one, because I'm vulnerable with a mediocre signal. If I got a big signal and half-ass talent, eventually we're going to figure it out. So that's why Jacor was built around exceptional signals. Then you got to have massive talent. Radio stations have 2 groups of customers. They got the listeners who don't pay anything, and they've got the advertisers who bring in the money. So most companies say, oh, the advertisers, everything. No. Advertisers are there to reach the listeners, not the other way around. Gordon McClendon pointed that out in the 50s. You got to put product first, then great sales, and then exceptional management to control costs. When I left the company, the number 1 cash flow in Clear Channel was LA, number 2 was New York, number 3 was Chicago, number 4, Cincinnati had $38 million in cash flow. WLW alone billed $26 million and kept 11.5. EBN was cash flowing 8, and KRC was cash flowing 7. We'd combined cash flow of $19 million. Well, and CKY was doing $1 million bucks. So, you know, that's good business. Now they let the sales department decide who you're going to interview, add a bunch of spots, put paid programming on, the ratings go down. What's happened to the bottom line? I mean, LW still does great. It probably bills a little more than it used to cash flow. It's a better plan to put the audience first. And yeah, you look, when we did all that silly shit, we can't cancel all. I think I lost $500,000 first week of Midday because, you know, department store, McDonald's, oh, well, okay. Then you're number 1 in everything, and somehow they come back. And that's a better plan than a mamby-pamby, you know, scaredy pants that, you know, 5 people complained on the website. We better stop that. You know, when I mean, come on. I mean, if you're not going to be interesting, what's the point?
It was a great radio station. And I always liked it when the books came in, and I always wanted to see 1834. I mean, you know, you talked about that before, but I mean, if you don't have that younger audience, then try to figure out how to go get it. And you get them one listener at a time. And you look for different ways to do something a little bit better. 55 KRC, when I came to town, Stan Matlock had 50% of the audience. I was in Buffalo, New York at WKBW, and somebody said, oh, you don't want to go to Cincinnati, Stan Matlock's there. I said, well, sounds like a good reason to go. And so 4 years later, I tied him at 25 and 25 when I left to go to New York. So, but I stole the ideas if I could. I mean, did from Gary, his jokes. I just told the punchlines, and then I say you'll hear the rest of it later on in the afternoon. But on 55 KRC, they had a 7:30 time check. And I thought, time check's a good idea, but why are they doing it at 7:30? 7 o'clock seems to me to make more sense. So I just started doing it at 7 o'clock, and that was, I don't know when that was. That was in the early 80s. And you're still doing it?
Still doing it. It's still there.
I mean,
it's sponsored. What are you going to do?
Yeah, now they sell it. No, you're absolutely right. But it just makes sense. You just do it better.
As a kid growing up in the business, I thought this was normal. And then I'd go to work at other radio stations, and I thought they were terrible. Like, what is wrong? I didn't realize that I was being surrounded by the best in the business. And every one of these guys were truly a family, and as you can see, still are.
How did the phrase "the big one" develop? Because anywhere that
Well,
it was all right. You know what? You're going to think I made this story up because it's very strategic how this came up. I resigned all day at Taft, and I get a call on a pager from Danny Allen, and I called him back, and he said, "You got to get down here. I've got tomorrow's music done, and I'm redoing something." Well, no, Danny, I don't work there anymore. He said, "Oh, I know. Phillips and I already talked the guard into. We're at LW. We're making the changes we know you're going to like. So come get down here." Well, I go down the first night, and these guys have already trashed everything, and they're changing everything, and it was directionally right, you know. So we went down to Ogden's, had a couple of beers, and we came back and said, well, I got to leave some kind of mark. So I cut a promo. I found a 30-second bed, and, you know, it had a natural stinger on the end, and I wrote out a couple of copy points, and basically it was just a tweak. It was like, you know, 700 WLW, news red, blah, 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 and you got the Reds, and we got this, and we got that, and it said, so you won't miss a Reds game. Right now, reach down and set the first button on your car radio to 700. Just do it right now. And we ran that all day the next day, and the idea was to pimp them because obviously the first button on AM in Cincinnati is 550, which is KRC, and that's like you reset that first button. And I can hear in my headphones, first take, but I'm running a little short. And I wanted to say on 700 WLW, and I couldn't stretch it out enough. I said, so on the big one. And I said it in a really exaggerated, funny way. And then I'm going to take it over. And Danny and John said, no, that's great. Well, so that ran every hour the next day. And by the day after, everyone was saying, the big one, you know, copying that delivery. So very strategic. I'd had a couple of beers.
Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for coming.
Good to see you again.
Been a treat. Been a treat.
Thank you all.
Tomorrow at noon, don't miss the Gunsmith Gourmet from Smith & Wesson, as Broadbank Broadcasting presents Cooking with the NRA. High-caliber cuisine from a guy with a gun. Tomorrow at noon, only on BBC.
That a certain Cincinnati magazine publication voted you one of the worst on-air personalities.
Susan, you're correct. What part of New York you're calling from?
Peekskill.
Oh, yeah. I was voted the worst radio talk show host in the Cincinnati market by a bunch of yuppies and Perrier-sipping, quiche-eating derelicts that live in the Hyde Park area, but they wouldn't know a good talk show host if they heard one.
That's true. How come they haven't recognized you, as being an important, intelligent, creative individual?
Well, you stay on as long as you want, Susan, but the thing is, my agents are now talking to WABC Radio in New York. Reuben Katz is trying to work out a long-term deal.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm not kidding. I might be in New York this time next year.
As I understand how this thing works, the object is to make all of these meters go as far to the right as possible.
That is Clarence Frogman Henry, and it was ripped off by Rod Stewart. I beg your pardon. That is Ain't Got a Home, isn't it, Doc?
Yes, it is.
Oh, whoa, whoa. I'm a lonely frog. I ain't got a home. Remember that? No one remembers that but me for some reason.
Wait, I see a baby to kiss. Can she get this baby for me to kiss up there? Hell, I missed the baby.
Okay, my name is Al Gardner. This is
Randy Michaels.
Yeah, I don't know what this thing is either, but we're supposed to be saying what we're doing here, and I'll tell you exactly precisely what we're doing here. What are we doing here?
Well, I think we're supposed to be doing a talk show, and this is supposed to be like work. But mostly we come in here, goof off for 4 hours. We abuse a 50,000-watt radio station with coverage into 9 states. We talk about what we want. We entertain ourselves, and if someone listens, so much the better. But all that stuff about informing and serving the public, to heck with that. We're having a blast in here. We're drinking beer. We're eating barbecue, and we're basically having a good time.
Seriously.
We sent OJ a shirt with an offer of $1 million if he were to wear it during the closing arguments or, almost any point during the trial.
WLW sent this letter to Simpson at the Men's Central Jail, and in it, O.J. was told, and we're going to quote here, "You'll have to prominently display the shirt, that means no jacket, and no other shirt, just the shirt."
In the meantime, in between time, it's been a ball. We'll see you next Sunday night. Dusty saying thanks a million for dialing our way. God bless you. Wishing you lots of love, much money, and a laugh a minute. Put on the coffee, Bubbles. I'm coming home.